What's up, everybody? This is Charlie Potter, senior team writer at BamaOnLine.com, and we're here to talk some Alabama football. We'll get to some hoops, we'll get to some positivity here at the end, but for right now, talking some Alabama football. I'm going to kind of put a bow on the Tennessee game and look ahead to Missouri and kind of some final thoughts on this matchup with Tennessee. I wrote down some numbers that kind of just jump off the page. I know we've talked about it quite a bit, but the 15 penalties for 115 yards, that's big. I know Tennessee was penalized quite a bit too. There's over 200 penalty yards in that game. So messy on both sides. Alabama was 3 of 14 on third down. Can't have that. The offense really struggled. Defensively, I thought they played pretty well outside of the run. The run game for Tennessee in the second half, he had 170 yards, which I think 84 of that came on one drive, but it kind of fell apart a little in the second half. And then obviously the two interceptions from Jalen Milroe. He had 45 attempts, under 50% completion rating. It wasn't his best performance. It was actually his worst of the season. And that's kind of what we wanted to start with. We're going to kind of turn it over to both of you guys. Blake first, just what did you think of Jalen's performance and how that impacted Alabama's result in Knoxville?
Yeah, I don't just think it was his worst performance of the season. It might have been the worst performance of his career. I mean, you could probably compare that to how he played against maybe Texas last season. He wasn't good in that game, but just overall, it's really one of the worst performances we've seen from an Alabama quarterback in quite some time. Because whenever you go back the last couple of seasons and the last couple of quarterbacks that have been leading Alabama, if you look at those losses that Alabama has taken, none of them have really fallen on the quarterback. I don't remember many times you look at a loss and pin it on Bryce Young, or Mac Jones never lost a game in his season as a starter. He did the year before, or even Tua. You weren't really pinning any losses on the play of those guys. So I saw one stat, I think it was from College Football Nerds, that said, I think that was the first quarterback with a QBR or a passer rating under 100 for Alabama since Jalen Hurts in 2017. So it's been a really long time since a performance like that has happened from an Alabama quarterback. And whenever you look at the offense, they couldn't do anything, and that starts with Milroe's ability to hit open receivers. He overthrew a lot of guys, and it really started on the first drive. I thought he looked shaky kind of from the beginning. You had some communication issues with pre-snap. I thought he was taking way too long to make checks at the line when the play clock is running down and Neyland Stadium's going crazy. And so that led to some miscommunication. And just overall, he made mistakes. He made overthrows. He looked uncomfortable. And just an entire 180 from what we had seen from him at the start of the season, especially in games against like Wisconsin and Georgia, where he looked like he could have been a Heisman Trophy candidate if he had kept that up over the course of the season. And then whenever you add on top of it that Alabama wasn't really able to run the ball, and you can put some of that on Milroe as well, because he, whether he was dealing with something nagging or not, it sounds like he's good enough to go from everything we've heard. Like he doesn't look as explosive running the ball for whatever reason that may be. And so whenever you take the quarterback run game out of his game, that's the best aspect of his game. That hurts Alabama's run game. That hurts the offense as a whole. So just really everything on down the line was not a good game from Jalen Milroe, in a game that he's going to have to put behind him, and one that he's going to have to find a way to play better moving forward if Alabama is going to have a chance to make the college football playoff and keep this season, the hopes of a postseason, alive.
Yeah, I think his confidence didn't look there in the game to me. That's something that I asked the coaches about on Monday, and even asking Kalen DeBoer, like you said, if he's dealing with anything, if he's fully healthy, and they kind of brushed that off. And I'll say that Alabama had its first practice on Tuesday. They hit the field again on Wednesday. Jalen Milroe is taking all the first team reps, so he is good to go. I don't think we'll see him on the availability report. It would kind of be a shock if that happened at this point. But yeah, there's something off. And I wanted to turn this over to you, Jimmy. Just what's next? Where do you go from here with Jalen? Because obviously it doesn't feel like there's nowhere to go but up. But after these couple stinkers, it kind of feels like you're starting to get close to the bottom.
he needs like a reset. I mean, just a reset. He doesn't need an overhaul. He doesn't need to start all over again, but he does need like a reset button, like in a video game. I think the off week, the bye week, man, I think it's a little bit bad timing. This would be a great bye week, I think, for Jaylen, and unfortunately, it's a week away. So to me, it's about surviving Missouri and getting to that bye week, and I think we might then start to see the old Jaylen. Whether it's, obviously he's not, there's a huge difference between being injured and hurt. Heck, I'm 54, so I can find a hurt every day. Now, Jaylen, is probably playing a little hurt. So are multiple other guys that will be on the field and starting Saturday. I think it might affect him a little bit because he was doing some things he doesn't normally do, like that consistent sailing of that sideline pass. Surely he's been inaccurate in the past, has missed some open receivers in the past, but that consistent high inaccuracy was sort of new to me, that he would do it that often. And that indicated to me that something was just a little off with him. And I just think he needs to hit a reset, confidence-wise, health-wise, and just kind of clear his head. He's been a really good player as recently as 3 weeks ago. So there's no need to think this is a new Jaylen that is we're just going to see every week. But he does need a reset button. Missouri's good on defense, but they're not Tennessee. Playing in Tuscaloosa is not like playing at Neyland. I think we'll see a better Jaylen this weekend on those two aspects alone. And heck, people that have doubted this kid ended up with a bunch of T-shirts. So I don't doubt Jalen's bounce backedness. Is that a word we just invented?
We could do it, yeah.
Yeah, bounce backedness. That he's good at that. So he will bounce back, but I sort of think the big bounce back is going to be post bye week. And to me, this week is a little bit about surviving.
Yeah, it feels like the army of naysayers has grown tremendously in the last couple of weeks, no doubt. And I think you make a good point, though. Like it feels like this would be the perfect week for a bye week, but you're not facing that Tennessee front. You're not facing that South Carolina front. Missouri doesn't have just the pass rush that those two teams have. I think that they do a lot of things that are kind of similar to Alabama defensively, and some of the offensive players have talked about that this week, obviously with, Kane Womack, having a relationship in the past with Corey Batoon, Missouri's defensive coordinator. So I think seeing some familiarity that could help Jaylen too. It's just, he needs to play cleaner. In the last 2 weeks, you have 4 interceptions. Like, I thought he played well against Vanderbilt. I don't think the way that Alabama lost that game, I don't think you could place that on Jaylen's shoulders at all. So the last 2 weeks have almost been kind of an anomaly. But if you make it 3 in a row, then it becomes a trend, and then you start to wonder, where do you go from here? And again, though, Jaylen's taking all the first team reps. Jaylen's the guy right now. If it persists, then you start to have some conversations maybe. But right now, I think he's the guy against Missouri, and he has a chance to bounce back. And if he can do that going into the bye week, I think that would be even bigger. But yeah, let's talk about Missouri a little bit. They come in 6-1. They have a better record than Alabama. I don't know if we expected that coming into the season, but they have a kind of an ugly loss on the road at A&M. They have a couple of close wins over Vanderbilt and Auburn in Missouri, so they're going on the road again. It's going to be tough for them, but I think this is an Alabama team that's kind of still searching for an identity here going into Week 9. So should be an interesting one. I'll turn it over to you, Blake. Though, what do you see from this Missouri offense and what they can do, especially from a passing attack standpoint?
Yeah, the passing attack standpoint is kind of where we're going to have to focus, because we found out today that Missouri's starting running back leading rusher isn't going to be playing in this game. So a lot of pressure is going to be on quarterback Brady Cook and this kind of Missouri passing offense. And he's been really good. He's a seasoned vet. He's been starting in this league for a couple years. His numbers aren't like pop off the page at you really. But I mean, this dude's a warrior. I mean, last week he got injured against Auburn, went to the hospital, and ended up came back in the game and led them on a comeback to win. So that's the heart of a guy I would want quarterbacking my team. Like that's, you can't coach that kind of stuff and the kind of heart that he plays with. But he's got some insane talent at receiver on the outside. The first guy that comes to mind is Luther Burden, who is a projected high NFL draft pick. He's not really putting up first-round NFL draft numbers this year. I think he's being maybe covered a little bit differently this year, coming back after having 1,000-plus yard season a year ago. He's currently got right under 500 yards, 4 touchdowns on the year. And then Theo Weiss, another really good, talented wide receiver for them as their leading receiver, also right under 500 yards. So that's a really talented duo. And this Alabama secondary is really banged up. And we've kind of learned a lot about that this week with Keon Sabb's going to be down. So you're going to have Bray Hubbard at safety for sure. Devontae Smith and Red Morgan are both kind of banged up at Husky. We haven't seen the availability report yet, so we don't know what their status really is, but we saw a lot of King Mack, a reserve there at Husky against Tennessee. And then at corner, Xavier Brown got banged up early in that game and had to miss, and we saw a lot of Jalen Mbakwe. So really at every spot almost, really outside of Damani Jackson and Malachi Moore, and even Damani has dealt with some stuff here the last couple of weeks. You've got guys that are banged up in the secondary. So the depth is going to be tested against this Missouri passing offense. And we've seen a lot of times these guys have been able to, opposing receivers have gotten open downfield against Alabama. Nico missed a couple of them, and then he hit a couple of them. And Brady Cook is more than capable of hitting those. So you're going to have a tested Alabama secondary, one who's got some new guys playing, and they're going to have to step up, and they're going to kind of have that next man up mentality that all the coaches have been talking about all week. If they're going to be able to contain this Missouri passing offense, if they can, it's going to be a good day. But I think there is a possibility that Alabama can be had there, and that's going to be something that kind of helps decide the game on that front.
Yeah, I mean, we were going to talk about injuries a little bit later, but I'm glad you brought it up too, because the secondary is banged up. I'll say this. I know Wednesday, Devontae Smith was able to do some things, and he's a guy, he's been battling injuries, feels like all season. He tries to go and then just can't. You'd love to have Smitty on the field because I think he's played really well. I know whenever we got ready to enter the month of October, he was kind of one of my guys to watch, and he's been watching a lot from the sideline, but through no fault of his own. So, yeah, a secondary that is banged up, that looks like it has had opportunities to be had, but Nico was 2 of 8 on those deep throws. So I'll say this too for Brady Cook. I mean, what a story, but if that had been in Tuscaloosa going to DCH, he might still be there. I don't think he'd have been able to get back to the game as quickly as he did. I don't know if anybody's ever had an experience with DCH, but slow as Christmas. I'll say that. We talked about it a little bit ago, though, Jimmy. This defense, at least from a front seven standpoint, isn't Tennessee, isn't South Carolina. But what do you think they do well? What's your kind of takeaway from the Tigers defense?
Yeah, what's super interesting in terms of Alabama fans watching this, in terms of it's like a mirror image. I mean, Missouri is, I don't know that they're the only team that runs virtually the same defense Alabama does, but they're one of the few and probably the only one on Alabama's schedule. So, is that an advantage for Alabama where, hey, this is the defense you see in practice? I would think it would be some level of comfortability for Alabama offense to kind of look across the line of scrimmage and see what you normally see in terms of how they line up and their alignment. And, it's just it's the South Alabama defense and the Kane Womack defense, and now it's the Missouri defense. Now, hey, they're 4th in the league. I mean, their defense has been good. Now, I agree. Charlie said earlier in the show, couldn't agree more. It's not Tennessee's front or South Carolina's front or Georgia's front. It's not like that. But overall, the unit as a whole at Missouri, they haven't given up much. Now, I would point to this, though. Who have they played to give up a lot of offense to? Not Auburn, not Vanderbilt, maybe Texas A&M. And lo and behold, they did give up 42, at A&M. So I think some of it's a product of who they've played. And Alabama may be the best offense they've seen so far. I should say the Alabama offense that we knew until about 2 weeks ago is the best offense they've seen so far. This is a defense that needs to be had. And really, Alabama's offense could do some favors for the defense by putting 30 on the board at 30, because I think Missouri would really struggle to get up to 30 against this Alabama defense. So 30 points, guys. That's a lot to ask, but I do think 30 is sort of a magic number of comfort for Alabama in this game.
Yeah, you look at that game against Texas A&M. I was looking it up while you were talking. The Aggies went 18 of 22 for 276 yards. Didn't score a touchdown, but I think they had a big day on the ground too. Boston College had 249 yards with 3 touchdowns. So there are opportunities. I think for Jalen Milroe, kind of going back to what we talked about at the top, it feels like this is an opportunity for him to really bounce back. For Alabama to kind of turn the page and flip the trend on its head a little bit, but it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out for sure. And that kind of leads us into the final point before we talk about hoops a little bit. You're at a crossroads a little bit. Alabama's lost 2 of its last 3. They're sitting there still with some decent odds to make the college football playoff. Depending on what kind of stock you put into ESPN's Football Power Index, I think they have the 12th best to get in right now. I think it's just win or go home, though. If you lose to Missouri, if you lose to LSU, I know some people might be looking ahead a little bit to that. If you lose at Oklahoma or in the Iron Bowl, you don't make the playoff. I think it's kind of simple as that. You need to win the rest of your games, and that's doable. Alabama can do that, but it starts this week. And so with that, I'll ask both of you the same question. Start with you, Blake. Just what do you need to see from Alabama to maybe buck this trend here of late?
I feel like we say it every week, but I really want to see this team run the ball. And I know they've struggled to do that in SEC play. I saw somewhere that Jalen Milroe and Justice Haynes have yet to combine for 70 yards rushing in an SEC game, which is kind of hard to fathom when you think about how talented those 2 running backs are. But really, I think if they're able, and we saw it a little bit against Tennessee, we saw one drive in the second half where they ran the ball 8 straight times. And so I don't know if it's struggling because of the lack of the quarterback run game in recent weeks or whatever it is. But if Alabama is able to run the ball, it'll be a whole lot easier on this offense. Especially considering there's another stat I heard. I think this one was from Josh Pate. He said that Alabama, when facing 3rd and long, 3rd and 7+, I think they're 5 of 30 something. I don't remember the exact number. 33. There you go. 5 of 33 on 3rd and 7+, 3rd and long. So whenever you get behind the chains earlier, you have a kind of 1-yard rush or you have an incomplete pass on 1st down, and it just sets you back. That's making things a whole lot more difficult for your offense and not being able to sustain drives, which has been kind of a constant theme all season. So I think if they're able to establish the run finally, maybe for the first time this year, it would open up a lot of things for this offense, because then you also get kind of safeties creeping down into the box. You get those deep shots that Milroe loves to throw. You get to go to Ryan Williams deep. Like, that would change a whole lot if it was able to happen. We've talked about it, I feel like, every week on this show. It still hasn't happened. I'm going to keep saying it until it does. What
about you, Jimmy? You in the same boat, or you got something else?
No, really similar to Blake's answer, which is great. I couldn't agree more. And gets back to that Josh Pate stat a little bit, which is staying out of 3rd and longs. And so many of the 3rd and longs aren't because on 1st down they went nowhere, on the 2nd down they went nowhere. It's penalties. It's penalties. That's a big part of it. And tackles for loss. There's too many negative running plays. There's too many, whether it's a Jalen run or a Jam or Justice run, or a pass to the perimeter that goes nowhere. And, I'm not super critical about play calling at all. I never have been, never will be. But sometimes I scratch my head on why we throw the ball on the perimeter to CJ Dupree, who I love, who I think is a really good player. But I don't understand why you go to that much effort to get the ball to the guy that runs a 5 flat instead of, okay, get the ball on the perimeter to Jeremy or Ryan or E-Man or somebody. But we just spend too much time not making enough yards on the perimeter, which sets up the 3rd and long. So I just think being more efficient on 1st and 2nd down. If they're more efficient on 1st and 2nd down, 3rd down takes care of itself. I quote this all the time. It's before you guys' time when Alabama had an offensive coordinator in the late 80s, Homer Smith, who's sort of an offensive coordinator guru of type. He said one time, I never forgot this, said the most overrated stat is 3rd down conversion rate. The most underrated stat is yards on 1st down. It's because if you're at 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, you're gonna make 1st downs. But if you're in 3rd and 9 and 3rd and 8, you won't. So making productive yards on first and second down. Run it, throw it. Just don't get in those 3rd and 8s. Alabama's terrible at it, but guess what? So is pretty much everyone. You can't win games from 3rd and 8.
Yeah, favorable down and distance is obviously key. You mentioned it too with the negative plays. I think Alabama's given up 42 tackles for loss. That's the same number that the defense has forced. So not great. I think they're in the lower half, lower third of the SEC in both of those stats. For me, I mean, it's very elementary, but it's something that Kalen DeBoer really didn't waste any time of mentioning after the game. They just need to play complementary football. And you look at this past game, the defense did enough to win the game. Now we can talk about receivers getting open, Nico Iamaleava not hitting them, all day long till you're blue in the face. But Alabama's defense got off the field when it needed to. But the offense, it felt like the complete opposite of what we saw at Vanderbilt, where you felt like if Alabama's offense got another opportunity at the end of that game, that they could have won it. But the defense just couldn't get off the field. Well, the defense gets off the field multiple times in this game, but then the offense doesn't take advantage of those opportunities. You look at the 3 turnovers. Alabama has 0 points off turnovers, and those 2 picks were big by Malachi Moore and Jalen Mbakwe. But it just feels like they just can't play complementary football here of late, really since the second half of the Georgia game. So, that's the recipe for success for any team, but it just feels like lately Alabama's not been able to do it on a consistent enough basis. And so I think it's as simple as that. If you can take advantage of the opportunities your defense awards you, then more often than not, you're going to be able to come out on top. And I think the defense needs to continue to do that. The turnovers are big. They need to get pressure on Brady Cook this weekend. If you can force some of those bad throws into some turnovers, then the offense needs to capitalize on it. So that for me, it's kind of where it starts. But enough of the doom and gloom, guys. Let's talk some positivity, some Alabama hoops. Blake and I were in Birmingham at Battle Auditorium on Friday night before we headed up to Tennessee. Made for a long weekend, but I think it was worth it. Alabama kind of beat the brakes off of Wake Forest 98-77 in an exhibition game. Without 4 scholarship players, without 3 guys that are probably going to be in the starting lineup whenever they're healthy. Saw some great things from Aiden Holloway. Mark Sears did his thing. Big game from Mo Diabate. But Blake, I know you shared your observations, after the exhibition and even on Tuesday with Tim. But what's maybe your biggest takeaway, or maybe most underrated takeaway from this exhibition game?
Most underrated takeaway, I think. Really, Alabama's perimeter defense looked really improved to me. The defense as a whole did, and I thought Cliff Lamourie was really huge as a rim protector inside, getting to actually kind of see what that looks like against another team. But I was impressed by the way that they guarded the perimeter, and that was an area where, yes, Alabama didn't have rim protection last season, but also an issue was they were getting blown by seemingly every possession, which was allowing a lot of those looks inside that were so easy. But you kind of go down the list. I was really impressed with Darion Reed, who is 6'7", long arms, got the exact body type that you want defending kind of bigger guards out there on the perimeter. And anytime he was in the game, he was on Hunter Salas, which is Wake Forest's best player. So that told me a lot about the trust the coaching staff has in him, for his matchup to be Salas when he's in the game. On top of that, I thought I saw some good things from LeBaron Philon. He was really active defensively. He kind of drew an illegal screen early in the game, and is just kind of jittery, kind of all over the place, which is a good quality for you to have. He's kind of a bulldog type mentality. We know Latrell Wrightsell is a solid defender, though we didn't get to see him out there. He was held out with kind of a minor injury. And I thought Mark Sears looked much improved on the defensive end right in front of us in the corner that we were sitting in. He had a stop in kind of an ISO situation. He got a steal, and on the run out, the guy he stole it from fouled him, and he just kind of stood there clapping and hyping the crowd up after that one. So to see that out of easily your best offensive player and your leader, seeing that he's kind of taking on more of a defensive mindset, I'm sure that was a lot of the feedback he got from the NBA draft this past offseason. But to see him improved, and then you also, he's not even healthy yet, but add in Chris Youngblood, who was probably the best perimeter defender on his team last season, you've got a good crop of guys who can defend opposing guards well. And then you add on top of that just the rim protection that you have, not just with Cliff. Aiden Sherrill, who didn't play, is another solid rim protecting center. And then I'm really excited to see the way that both Grant Nelson and Jaron Stevenson can be used as kind of off-ball, weak side help defenders, especially on the block. The way that Cliff, if he's in a post-up one-on-one with Janai Broom or whoever it is, you have a 6'11" guy coming from the other side that can get a weak side block and help that way. So you have a lot of really good personnel, and the fact that you have guys that guard well on the perimeter now is going to change so much about this defense. I don't know if it's going to be top 3 good like Oates wants it to be and like some of their best defenses have been. It certainly won't be 111th, I can tell you that much. Like, this is going to be a really solid defense and going to be a huge piece of this team, and one of the reasons why it's going to be able to be so elite.
Yeah, 3 to 111. That's a pretty wide range. Easy to hit somewhere in the middle of that, I think. But no, I think you're right. I think they'll be much better defensively. And if you pair that with the offensive firepower of this team, I think they made 19 threes. They shot up a bunch of them. But it's a lot of fun to watch. And you don't really want to make too much of an exhibition game. But the fact that Alabama was without 4 guys, Grant Nelson, Latrell Wrightsell, Chris Youngblood, figured to be big pieces to this team, and then Aiden Sherrill as well. You have to be pretty encouraged by what you see, and we'll see them again on Monday. They're going to have a second and final exhibition game against Memphis and Huntsville at the Von Braun Center. That should be a lot of fun. And Jimmy, what do you think needs to be maybe a carryover from this, or what do you want to see maybe in the final tune-up before the season tips off here on November 4th?
Yeah, what I want to see, maybe it's unrealistic, but what I want to see is didn't y'all remind me, y'all were there, didn't Darion Reed win the hard hat?
He did, barely beating out Mo D, who had a hell of a game.
Right. Well, the depth of talent on this team, what would be ideal, where you could just sign this up for, what would be a great team is if you had a different guy winning that hard hat award every week. It's not the same dude. It's a different guy making the effort plays, a different guy, a different blue collar guy every night. So I want anyone other than Darion Reed, even though I cannot emphasize how cool it was that you have a highly recruited, highly regarded freshman superstar win the blue collar award in the first college game he's ever played in. I'm a guy willing to do all the dirty work, even though he had every right to show up as Mr. Prima Donna, Mr. Diva, but he shows up, diving for loose balls. I think just a different guy winning the blue collar, hard hat award, and just a different MVP every night, that it's not every single night it's Reed with the hard hat and Sears with the MVP. You'd have a great team. You'd still be good. But, man, if you had a different dude winning those 2 awards, hey, tonight's game MVP was this guy. Tonight's hard hat winner is this guy. And you just switch that out all season long, and all 10, 11, 12, even 13 guys taking turns winning those awards, you got yourself one heck of a ball club.
I think, though, Aiden Holloway was the leading scorer. If that continues, that'll help the message board, especially if the football team continues on this trajectory. You got to have some positive vibes and good morale, and I think that would help. But I'm with you. I mean, heck, I was surprised that Mo D didn't win it, but I think what was it, Blake? He lost by half a point. Yeah, like it was half a point. So they've got some guys diving on the floor and making those blue collar plays. It's been a lot of fun to watch. I can't wait to get up to Huntsville and see it. And it'll be here before we know it. November 4th is coming up, and it'll be a lot of fun. First game of the season at Coleman Coliseum. But yeah, hopefully we can look forward to wins from both programs moving forward, and this can be a much brighter and happier show and website. But until then, we'll see how it goes this week. I know, Jimmy, you'll be on the post-game show. We'll be back on Tuesday with Tim Watson. We'll do this all again next week. But if you haven't already, like and subscribe. If you're listening via podcast, give us 5 stars. We enjoy doing this, even though it might not be as bright and sunny some weeks. But you'll stay with us. We'll continue to provide wall-to-wall coverage. Blake and I will be at Bryant-Denny in the press box on Saturday, and then in Huntsville on Monday. So thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you guys in the next show.